Yeah, yeah. There we go. Good morning, Linda from California, from the Mojave Desert. How is it out there? Andre, hey, sweetie. Dave Dowling up there to the north. Everybody's sending you much love today. We're going to be, of course, talking about Afghanistan. I know I've stayed on that this week, but it is a big story. And in fact, next week, I'm working on getting some family members. I've got Pastor Tisha Williams who's going to give us the good news shortly. I'm going to get some of family members from the whose whose loved ones served in Afghanistan. I think it's important to remember them at this time because when I spoke with this woman yesterday, and I've spoken with her before, she's just a dear friend. She said, we are really struggling right now. And there are a lot of suicide watches. I said, wow. Because the mission, people are now questioning that. So you can imagine how they're feeling. People who lost a husband, a wife, a son, a daughter, a cousin, a loved one, a loved one.
1 minute.
There's a lot going on. So we need to talk about that uh, because this has the potential to unravel a lot. So much love to everybody. Stay right here. Stay right here. I'm going to be grading the media today. How about that? They need to be graded because you need to know what they've been what they have been what they have refused to acknowledge.
30.
It's a lot going on here. Yes, it's just a lot. So, Paul, let me know as soon as you can when you get Dr. Deborah for holding on. Thanks so much. All right, let's have a great show.
It's time to be self-reliant.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Go to mypatriotsupply.com.
Time.
Mypatriotsupply.com. You're listening to the
You can turn it up a bit, Paul.
because facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Everybody, welcome to the Tita Jackson Show. It's Friday, August 20th. Can you believe it? Oh my gosh, the summer's almost over, but it's still with us, everybody. Friday, August 20th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today, and I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page here on Facebook and on WCPT's page on Facebook, WCPT 820. And please like and share, everybody. Like and share. Dave Dowling, Jewel, Barbara Bacon, Shirley from Philadelphia, Barbara from Oak Park, Vanderlei from down there in Brazil, sending you much love. Bonjour, my babe. And Jewel and everybody. Jewel's always sharing this on many other platforms. I thank you. Everyone, please share this show on as many platforms as you can and tell people about it because we've seen a lot of growth and we thank you for that and we want to continue to spread the word. Call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text, but I want to hear your voices today. I want you to tell me about Afghanistan, what you think about it. What do you think about the tough time people are having trying to get out, including Americans? Kabul is the airport of record in that country, and a lot of people don't live close to it. So there's a lot going on. What do you think of the pushback, and what do we owe Afghanistan? We're going to have Phyllis Bennis from the Institute for Policy Studies. She's head of their new internationalism project. She's saying, we owe them reparations. That might push a lot of people back, but we did a lot of damage, and most of us were so removed from what happened there. We don't know what happened. We don't know about the massive loss of life that they've experienced, that they've had to withstand under American occupation over the past 20 years. So we've got to talk about that today. Got to talk about that and grading the media. What are they saying? What are they not saying? And okay, Paula said that she, her daughter, and her fiance are going out this weekend to a wedding. Dr. Shanina Knighton and Dr. Deborah Ferolin are going to talk to us about what you should do if you're going to hang out this weekend. Okay? They're going to be very specific about what it is that you need to do because you can't just get out here. I see so many people who are, at the very least, unmasked and they're talking and gabbing as if we're not still in a pandemic, and we are, everybody. So let's get right to it, everybody. Please like and share, like and share. Andre, like and share. Dave Dowling, Linda, Louie, Vanderlei, everybody like and share on the Santita Jackson Show. Let me get a couple of these headlines out the way. As we dedicate the show to police officer Ella French, who was funeralized yesterday. She was killed just a couple of weeks ago, and thousands of mourners attended or watched her funeral service. Uh, she was shot and killed at a traffic stop in Inglewood here. And so we're praying for her family. She was just 29 years of age. And indeed, mourners included our Mayor Lori Lightfoot, former Mayor Richard M. Daley, and top department officials and friends and family. And so sending them much love and many blessings today, particularly her family. There's a new poll that is showing that the Afghanistan war was unpopular amid the chaotic pullout. Wow, everybody. A significant majority of Americans doubt that the war in Afghanistan was worthwhile, even as the United States is more divided over President Joe Biden's handling of the exit and foreign policy and national security, according to an Associated Press poll. Everybody, roughly two-thirds said that they did not think America's longest war was worth fighting, according to the poll. Meanwhile, 47% approve of President Biden's management of international affairs, while 52% approve of him on national security, everybody. There's an internal State Department cable that warned of the Kabul collapse, an internal State Department memo. It's called a dissent when people who work at the State Department lodge a complaint against, I guess, the boss. An internal State Department memo last month, according to this Wall Street Journal article, warned top agency officials of the potential collapse of Kabul soon after the United States August 31st troop withdrawal deadline in Afghanistan, according to a U.S. official and a person familiar with the document. And there is a book that's going to be coming out by Craig Whitlock um, of the Washington Post that's going to talk about these Afghanistan papers. I can't wait to see that. Much like the Pentagon papers, ooh, the Taliban, for their portion, they are vowing to ban heroin. Now, they are one of the biggest producers of heroin in the world. Heroin production has boomed in Afghanistan in recent years. While they have been under American occupation, while we've had an explosion of a heroin crisis in the United States, which has helped to fund the Taliban. And experts say they will struggle to wean themselves off of the profitable trade despite their promise to do so. But they have made a promise. We are assuring our countrymen, they said, and the international community, we will not have any narcotics produced from now on. Nobody's going to get involved in the heroin trade. Nobody can be involved in drug smuggling. Adding to U.S. failures or U.S., well, I guess it's a situation, everybody. The Taliban have grabbed billions of dollars worth of American weaponry. They are now in effective control of billions of dollars of U.S. weaponry, from thousands of grenades and machine guns to Black Hawk helicopters, as American forces poured into Afghanistan over the past 2 decades. All of this weaponry, they're leaving the weapons behind. What do you think about that? Call me or text me at 773-763 WCPT. The Texas House Democrats, well, they tried valiantly, but they just reached a quorum last night. That's right. For the first time since July, clearing the way for new voting restrictions to pass after a record-breaking Democratic boycott had stalled the bill for weeks, everybody, creating a standoff with Republicans and shining a light on voter suppression laws that are being enacted all over the country. Thursday's session effectively ended the months-long Democratic protest over the voting measure, at least for now. We will, of course, be keeping up with this story on the Santita Jackson Show. U.S. officials are now reviewing the possibility that the Moderna vaccine is linked to higher risk of uncommon side effects than previously thought. This is federal health officials are investigating emerging reports that Moderna The Moderna vaccine may be associated with a higher risk of a heart condition called myocarditis in younger adults than previously believed, according to two people familiar with the review who emphasized the side effect. Probably remains uncommon, but they're going to have to investigate uh, to know for sure. And that investigation will involve the Food and Drug Administration and the CDC. And it's focusing on Canadian data that suggests that this is so. Unvaccinated federal employees will face discipline for refusing the coronavirus vaccine, testing at work, everybody. Federal employees who are not fully vaccinated will face discipline if they refuse to be tested for the coronavirus when reporting to work in person, according to the Biden administration. And President Biden has erased student debt for those with severe disabilities, everybody. That's right. The Biden administration announced yesterday that it is moving to wipe out $5.8 billion in federal student loan debt held by more than 300,000 people with severe disabilities. Now, progressives are saying, now do that for everybody else. Ooh, highly religious Americans are less likely to believe in intelligent life beyond Earth. What do you think about that, everybody? Call me, text me, 773-763-9278. And as we bring you on, Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, guess what? For the first time, at least at the first time since they have been recording these things, rain fell in Greenland. Now, mind you, Greenland is cold and full of snow, but now they're getting rain. Ooh, Reverend Tisha Williams, Pastor Tisha Williams, you know, every day. When I heard that on the news this morning, my ears perked up. I said, what? In Greenland? Where there's nothing but snow? Mm. Give me some good news, girl. I need
Things are changing, or as they say, the times they are changing.
Yes, they are.
Good morning, Santita. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, as always, for having me. I just want to report to you the recon report. When last we met, we talked about being ripe for recon, and I want to continue that today. When we last reported on our mercenaries, God had commanded Moses to send men to scout out the country of Canaan that he was giving to the people of Israel. And the purpose of this recon mission was to gain information by visual observation about the activities and the resources of the enemy, potential enemies, and the geographic characteristics of Canaan. And today we find that as they have come back, even after seeing all of the abundance in the land and all that the land had to offer, we find that when they come back, they went out, they spied it out, and we find that they punked out. The Hebrews refused to possess the land that God had promised them. For years, they prayed, they hoped, they wished for change. And now that the change has come, they are openly and vehemently rejecting it. And what's more tragic is that they do so right at the cusp of it, when it's just within reach. What a tragedy to get to the cusp of a breakthrough, only to believe that God won't follow through. I have found that I had no other choice but to ask why. They already walked through it. They held proof of it. And so why not possess it? And the answer in a word, Santita, is fear. Certainly, if faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, then fear is false evidence appearing real. And when we analyze the optics in the face of opposing forces, the best weapon the Hebrews had against fear was their relationship with God. You would think that as they had come to know God more intimately, they would be more confident in God's character and ability to protect them. They were on the precipice of the promised land and opt not to press for what God had provided, even though God assures them of his future protection based on his past provision. You may remember how God provided for them and protected for them as they were rescued from Egypt. In that moment, God laid the foundation for their present confidence in him as he liberated them. And yet, they did not recall that in the face of the opposition. Over the years, when you think about addicts and convicts, leaders, sufferers, and survivors, they all know that God's unwavering faithfulness is not limited to Israel. I want somebody to know today that God is also faithful to you. When you're fearful, remember how God has already been faithful to you and God will not stop now. Each time you overcome a fear, you gain greater faith. Faith honors God and God honors faith. It's okay to feel fear, but today I want you to make faith your predominant state of mind. Do you allow fear to determine your actions? Fear is a self-imposed roadblock on the path to progress. When you feel fear, you're actually on the verge of making a significant change in your life. So you should get excited. And yet I understand it's difficult to get excited about fear when it's really a phobia. While fears and phobias are similar, there is a distinct difference. Fear is defined as a distressing emotion caused by impending danger or pain, the feeling or condition of being afraid. A phobia is a persistent and irrational fear of a specific object, activity, or situation that leads to a compelling desire to avoid it. And here we're seeing the fear of change or changing things, the phobia we call metathesiophobia, which is also linked to tropophobia, which is the fear of moving. According to psychologists, everyone experiences fear of change. Even positive change always causes stress. The problem occurs, though, when fear of change causes inertia, when it causes isolation, our inability to make decisions, failure to consider options, when it creates self-doubt, which may prevent you from trying something new or stepping out of your comfort zone. Everything we find here with the children of Israel. And while we're still battling COVID-19, let us not cast aside how fatal fear of change can be and how lethal lethargy is. It's truly a sad day when you can't see through the grapes to see the grapes, when you can't see past giant opposition to see giant opportunities, when the fallacies of fear outweigh the future fruitfulness of faith. Understand today that change and fear go hand in hand. There's a reason to be excited when you're afraid. It's very possible that you're at the beginning of great change in your life. And so today, ask yourself, are you ready for great change in your home, on your job, in your relationship, in church? You've walked through it. You've held it. You have proof of it. The question remains today is, will you possess it? Please don't be like the children of Israel who refused to possess Canaan, for that day will live in infamy as the day that fear overcame faith. That's the good news.
Amen. Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, excuse me. Thank God for that. I don't know about you, but I really needed that boost this morning. I really, really did. And I thank you. I see you, sis. You all have to get that book. You have to get that book. Dr. Deborah Holden has bought a whole gaggle of them so that she can give them to her friends. I see you, sis. Go to Amazon and pick it up. Before we go to you, Dr. Deborah Holden, Afghanistan is on everyone's mind. And Chris, Chris, you've called in. What's on your mind today, Chris?
Hey, how you doing? Good morning.
Good hearing your voice.
Are you there?
Yes, good hearing your voice.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I was calling about was I don't think that the idea to leave the civilians there first and the equipment there and then take the troops out and then go back and try and get them was maybe the best plan of evacuation here. What's your thoughts on that? I think we have to call out what we see, and that was probably maybe the largest military blunder in the history of our country. I gotta think that. Even on the Titanic, what did they do? They loaded the women and children in the boats first, and then the people that were the crew stayed there trying to man the ship. In this case, the crew went running and left everybody on the ship to sink. You got to call them out. I want to hear it.
Well, honestly, see, Chris, is an investigation. There are some people on the Hill, some of our elected officials. They're calling for an investigation because the Biden administration is saying that there were intelligence failures. And then you have some people who are who are in the State Department.
Let's say there is intelligence
no,
failures.
hold on.
Here's what I would say.
Hold on.
Does it make
let
any
me
sense
finish.
to you to pull military? No, just common sense.
No. I hear you, but I'm saying to you, whenever I hear people at this top level disputing each other, it makes me question what really happened.
Make you question their competence. I would
No,
agree.
no. Don't put words in my mouth, and I'm not going to put them in yours.
Well, I'm going to put words in.
No.
whoever's
Say
mouth
what?
because
But
it's clearly
Chris,
incompetence.
Chris,
You got
Chris, calm down,
hundreds of
Chris.
people that are going to be raped and
Chris,
murdered and
Chris,
savaged, and you know the folks we're
Chris,
dealing with.
Chris. I
And
hear you, Chris. Stop.
Okay.
Talk with each other. Now, I hear you. I mean, we all have skin in the game here. But what I'm trying to do is engage you, but we've got to do it respectfully. I'm not going to talk over you, and you shouldn't talk over me. That's the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this. I don't want anyone to be, including those who are our allies, who will be in grave danger if they are left behind. Could this have been done better? I'm sure it could have been. I'm sure it could have been. I know all of the pieces. I just don't. And so I'm going to wait and see who knew what and when.
10 years.
Well, no.
10 years.
No. The only reason we don't know, Chris, the reason we don't know a lot of what it is that we don't know is because we take our feet off gas. You have to press the government. The government is informed by us. These people don't answer us because we don't ask. We don't go to the offices of the congresspersons in both houses whom we elect to work for us. That's the problem. That's a big part of the problem. We get it twisted. As soon as we elect someone, we act as if we work for them. No, they work for us. And they have a lot to speak. They have a lot to speak to. I heard someone from the Gold Star family yesterday. And someone else works with them. And they both said to me, suicide, we're on a lot of suicide watches right now. Because the mission that was described to us that got us overseas, this is not what we died for. This is not what we got for. This is not what we went over there and risked life and limb for. So there are a lot of moving parts. I want to hear everybody's story. I want to hear all sides, and then I can make a determination. Now you arrive at your conclusions. You arrive at your conclusions. Well, you arrive at your conclusions the way that you do. I just arrive at them. I just don't jump to them. Okay?
Yeah, I guess I'm just using common sense.
I think
if you were in a big, huge crowd with violent folks around and you had, let's say, police there, and you had civilians that needed to be protected, you would not pull out your police and say, hey, civilians, we'll be back to get
Chris,
you a little
I can hear you, but the problem is, you know what you're not discussing? The tens of thousands of Afghan people who lost their lives on our watch and at the other end of our guns.
Oh, my God, absolutely.
No. But so, no. Chris, if you're going to have this discussion, okay? Because the Taliban is not hated by everybody. They're not. Most people in Afghanistan wanted us out because they don't like colonialism. They don't like occupy.
And that's okay.
No. It's not just okay. We didn't like occupy. Chris, you're right. We don't like occupiers either. That's.
I want to talk about that.
No, but you can't. But Chris,
I want to talk about the process.
Chris, what you want to do is what you want to do is roll over me. You don't want to have a discussion. You want what you want to do. Put him on hold. What you want to do, put him on hold, Paul. What you want to do is vent.
1 minute.
That. The one rule of engagement that we have on this show is respectful engagement. Period. Now, I don't mind you having your thoughts because that's what this platform is for. But you're not going to call in here and roll over me or anyone else on this platform. That's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to get to the bottom of what happened here. What happened was colonialism, quite frankly, and occupation. Something that Americans resented. That's why we kicked the British out of here. So let's be very clear. There are a lot of moving parts here. And Chris, I hear you. And we'll only know what happened when we have a full investigation. We can speculate right now. It looks a certain way, but I need to know for sure, definitively, what happened.
10.
Who knew what when? Who was left behind? What happened? What was the intention? That's what I want to know. I don't want to fix the blame. I want to fix the problem because it should never happen again. But then again, we shouldn't be occupying other countries. It is not our oil up underneath their sand. It is not, they are not our minerals up underneath their dirt. How about that? So enough. Let's move forward. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Yes. Hello? Ooh. Dr. Deb? Hello?
Can you hear me?
No, I can't before.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Good. I'm going to bring Shanina on so we can talk about partying, but I have a question for you first, and I want you to tell people where they can catch you this weekend on television, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Well, you're going to be on Reverend Sharpton's show, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. It's on Saturdays and Sundays. Okay. So if you're going to be if you're going to have any other, I want to put that out there, okay? So people can look in, can tune in, and can let people know that they want to see you again there. Okay, but I'm going to throw a policy. I'm going to throw a policy question your way about these about experts warning rich nations that this push for the boosters could lock in vaccine apartheid. I want you to give me a quick statement on that, and then we'll get to you and Dr. Knighton and how we can protect ourselves as we go out and have a good time this weekend. Okay, we've got the crackling sound. Can you bring me down just a bit, Paul? Oh, Dave, it's okay. You said sometimes people figure what they know is too important to chat. I hear you, but we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere talking over each other and being disrespectful. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I will not have that here. Not here. You can do it someplace else, but you won't do it here. No, that's not going to work. It's not going to work.
We have Dr. Knighton.
Dr. Knighton, excuse me, is the pastor still there, Pastor Williams? Or did she
No,
leave?
she's not.
Okay, very good. Okay, Dr. Knighton.
Hello. Hi.
You know, we got Deborah Furhold, and she's going to be on Reverend Sharpton's this weekend, everybody, on MSNBC. It's so exciting. We're very excited. He's on now, when are you going to be on? Is it Saturday or Sunday, Dr. Deb?
Saturday.
Okay. So that's tomorrow.
Saturday. I just sent you a little video too or something. Saturday at 5:15.
Okay, well, you know what, that can move around. We want them to tune into the show.
Well, I log in at 5:15. I think it comes on at 5:30.
Well, just know that they can move it around. So we just
evening or morning?
in the afternoon, Eastern time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we want to do is let people know that they need to tune into Reverend Sharpton's show, just in case they move your appearance around. That's all we want them to do. Okay, so, but we want people to do that. Oh, I see this lovely video. People are living their best life.
Last night.
Yeah, honey,
Somebody sent it to me.
Look, folks are doing the most, and they will all tell you, "Well, I've been vaccinated." I'm telling you. I've never heard anyone say
a lot of those people have not been vaccinated.
Yeah,
those are our millennials, and the majority of them are not vaccinated.
But I'm telling you,
5% of them are not vaccinated.
But I'm telling you, the two places. I mean, everybody's careless right now. Everybody, and it's awful. It's awful.
Yeah.
As I'm sitting up here with Bassett tracing up my nostrils, because as we get out, and you know me, I do the most with all my masks. And I don't like it. But I gotta do it.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and please join the Morning Stars. My Morning Stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and on my YouTube channel, The Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, their Facebook page is streaming us as well. And we want to hear from you today as we talk about Afghanistan or Afghanistan. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to pronounce it, but if it's Taliban, I think it should be Afghanistan. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to be grading the media. What are they saying? What are they not saying? And then, do we owe the Afghan people reparations? Were they well served by the United States occupation? Yes or no? We're going to talk about that in the second hour. But right now, we're going to be talking about COVID 19. Many of you are getting ready to go out and live your best lives this weekend and have fun. We want you to do it safely because people are out here and they're doing the most. But before we get to Dr. Shanine Knighton and Dr. Deborah Holden, we're so excited. Dr. Deborah Holden is going to be on Reverend Al Sharpton's MSNBC show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. We don't want you to miss it. It is going to be fantastic. You know, she is someone who is um, really a policy, just a genius in terms of policy. And we need someone in this public health space who can tell us where we need to go, because you've got to have laws, you've got to have policies that we can enact, that we can follow, that can keep us healthy. And so we're very, very excited that you're going to be on with Reverend Sharpton tomorrow. I know you're going to be fantastic.
Well, thanks. It's exciting stuff. It's exciting stuff.
It is exciting stuff. Well, along those lines, let me ask you this. Before we get to you and Dr. Knighton, as we talk about how we can stay safe as people are going out, experts are really all over the world. They're very upset about America giving boosters, these third shots, to so many Americans, availing them to Americans when most of the world has been shut out. What do you think about that? They're saying that this could lock in vaccine apartheid. That's what they're calling it.
Well, I think that has a lot of truth to it. But here's the double-edged sword of that. Okay, so this lack of good global stewardship is not a new phenomenon. Those who have classically hoarded resources, including taking natural resources from countries, and those countries themselves not even being able to utilize those resources. So when I was in Ghana, Ghana produces some of the world's greatest coffee beans. And in Ghana, you can't get a good cup of coffee. They drink instant coffee because all of that coffee is exported, processed somewhere else, and then shipped out all across the world. So this notion of poor global stewardship is not a new one. And the reality of it is we now have some strong evidence that a third shot is needed. And the recommendation right now is that third shot be prioritized for people with weakened immune systems. So that is what the data tell us, but it doesn't, that's sort of separate and distinct from, we just don't have good global stewardship. We've never shared the wealth. We've never shared resources as it relates to health. So yeah, it kind of is makes your skin crawl a little bit to think that there are people in this country who'll be getting their third when other countries where people haven't even had an opportunity to get one.
Everybody think about it, because this is what we're dealing with in the world today. This Delta variant didn't even start in the United States. This is a global pandemic, and it is being passed from person to person, nation to nation, across borders. Think about that. Which brings me to, as we wind down the summer, but we are, we loosened up a lot of restrictions. Some restrictions are being reimposed, but people are going on about their business. They are doing their thing, Michael, Ann, and Joyce, and Dave Dowling and Lorraine. They are just out here with unmasked, having a great time. Let me ask you. Let's start with Dr. Shanina Knighton, Dr. Deborah Holden. If someone's going to a wedding this weekend, what should they do?
I think the first question comes is it inside or outside?
Okay. What's the difference? If it's inside, if it's outside?
So if it's a outside wedding, I will tell you, and I will continue to emphasize this, that being outside is not what gives you COVID. It's not. I've talked to my colleagues in infectious disease. With me being in infection prevention, I know this. The air circulation and the air exchanges are so great outside that the chances of there being a concentration of droplets in the air is minimal. So with that being said, it does not mean that the activities for which you partake in, such as sharing spoons, such as sharing cups, such as, let's say, talking over tables and touching tables, there will be more so of an environmental or direct person-to-person transmission that would occur outside than there would be from the air of just being at a wedding. And that is without having to wear masks. Of course, if people feel comfortable wearing masks, to wear masks, especially if they're not able to distance appropriately. But it has been shown, there isn't any evidence that we found leading to being outside is going to lead to COVID. Now, if we're talking about an indoor wedding, depending on the space, you do have to worry about the recirculation of the air. And while that's something that people don't think about often, it's something that's very important because that is what causes a buildup of concentration of droplets in the air potentially when people are in a closed-in setting. The other piece of it is 9 times out of 10, people are more close-knit when they're indoors. If we're talking about tables being close, talking about a reception, if we're talking about a church, 9 times out of 10, it's in an old church. So the question then comes is the HVAC system updated to where it provides at least 6 air exchanges per hour? If it doesn't provide at least 6 air exchanges per hour, are there windows that are being opened? Are there doors open to allow for that air exchange? So there are a number of things that we will have to think about just dealing with the air. But again, we're talking about behavior. So are we talking about buffet style where everyone is serving themselves? If that is the case, then making sure the hand sanitizer is not just available for when people are touching spoons, but also making sure it's available before they eat. Because people have to realize if you go down an assembly line and you're touching every spoon, every person in that room is going to touch that spoon. And when you sit down to eat your roll, you sit down to touch your own spoon, you touch your phone, you do anything like that, you've now taken the potential germs from everyone else, even if they have cleaned their hands, and you put it on yours. Because we have to remember only 3 to 6% of people clean their hands correctly. The other piece of that is, and I am notorious for this even when I go out to eat, but it also happens in wedding settings, is that when the servers come around to you, they should not be talking over your plate. Mm. It's fine if they stand a little bit behind you, but they should not be talking down to you because even with the mask, droplets still have the potential to still travel downward. So you want to make sure that no one is talking over you. As well as if you are, let's say, a family member of a family member or a friend and you're visiting their table, you don't want to be talking down over someone else as well, given the current climate that we're in. I also advise when we're talking about hugs, people say, oh, I didn't know I could still hug during COVID. I never stopped hugging during COVID. But what I do is I make sure that I'm not standing and they're not standing in what we call speaker's dust, right? Meaning that if we're talking directly to each other, we should not be hugging in that area. So I emphasize to individuals to be just to be silent for a minute and move over to another area and just give each other a hug if you really want to hug someone. Especially given the current climate that we're in right now, you may not know if that's the last time you may hug that individual. So we want to make sure that we are not, curving how we feel about love just by trying to be too safe. But with that being said, there are ways in which we can be safe, and some of these activities is what will reduce the risk.
How does that square with what you saw in Flint, Michigan last night? I mean, it's a kind of, Michigan is just like College Central. It's a lot of things. Yes. Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, one more thing before
Mm-hmm.
you get to that question.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is this: if you are walking around and they have cocktails and appetizers,
Yes.
don't go around shaking hands. This is something that's always been a pet peeve of mine. If I was at, like, let's say, a research networking event, is that we're sitting around and we're eating, cheese and crackers, but you want to shake my hand before we start talking, but we're all eating. So even though, like, it's odd, but some transmission does happen with the elbow bump, it is better to do an elbow bump than to be shaking hands while you're eating cocktails. If there's an open table of appetizers and they're just laying there, think about how many people are going to be talking over those appetizers before you decide to take one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
She knows every
gosh.
time. Look, I was literally at the Waldorf Astoria many years ago at the lakes at Las Vegas. It's now actually closed. And the Waldorf has the best buffet. And I literally watched these guys have an argument over the buffet.
Oh.
And I was standing there and I was watching like the spit fly out of their
Oh.
mouths. And
Oh.
then they started laughing. And I was like, I'm not eating a nail thing on that buffet. And it is true. During COVID, people are just, if we're just talking about basic droplets, people don't think about that type of stuff. So I just really appreciate Dr. Knighton for taking it a little bit deeper for us and really having us think about and see things in some different ways. Because a lot of people, they hear outdoors is best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Outdoor is best. But then if the wedding's indoor, they don't want to miss the wedding. But this is the kind of stuff where people need to be thinking about this when you're having your weddings. If you are insisting on having your wedding and that's your right, why not do it outdoors? People that are getting married right now at this time of year indoors, it makes no sense to me because the weather is so conducive right now for beautiful outdoor weddings, and it would keep you and your guests safer. So it makes me laugh because sometimes when I listen to Dr. Knight, I'm like, man, it's a miracle I'm still alive.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm trying to say? I went to get some soup for a friend of mine yesterday. And the gentleman who was working there, I mean, they have really, like, this place doesn't offer as much food as they used to, right? And so he didn't have his gloves on, and he picked up the soup containers, where you kind of use your finger clip, where your thumb is inside and your forefingers inside of the soup container. And I said, oh yeah, no, I thought about Dr. Knighton, seriously. And I said, because he was, a little tight, because you know me, I try to be friendly, but he was a little tight. And I just very gently, I said, sir, would you mind if you get some other containers? Because your hands were, yeah, just don't lean on my counter. I said, not a problem. But just please change that out so I can.
This is we'll call this the Knighton effect.
Whew.
I watched my children get McDonald's, and the McDonald's came home, and my daughter took the ketchup packet, put it right to her mouth,
Whew.
and bit it down, to peel it back.
Yes.
It was almost like in slow motion. I'm trying to reach out, like, no,
Don't do it. Whatever you.
That's right. Whatever was on the person's hands who touched it, whatever container it was sitting in, which likely does not get cleaned often, right? You gotta think about it. The place where those packets go. That stuff don't get people.
You better say it.
Out the place where the ice is stored. So I'm like, you then don't take that and put that in your mouth. I mean, like literal direct contamination. I'm like, oh man. So yeah, I'm under the Knighton effect. I'm just now more aware, but I like it. It's not fearful for me. I find myself laughing, but I just think, man, if we could bring this heightened mindfulness and then shift and practice this basic things that we do. We were at a restaurant a few weeks ago, and the waitress she had 4 waters, and how she got the 4 waters was she put her gloved hand inside the 4 waters and picked them all up with one hand.
Oh, God.
You better say it, Dr. Deb.
You can take all of those waters back. Oh, no, but my hand was gloved. I said, I understand. And whatever was on the outside of your glove now just got rinsed off in our water glasses. Do not put your hand inside of our glass, please. At that point, I was like, we just need to leave because now I don't trust what could happen. And we did. We ended up leaving and we went somewhere else. I just didn't like the experience and I didn't like how defensive the person was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this is like 101. Gloves or ungloved, you don't put your hand inside of somebody's drink. So, yeah, I'm under the Knighton effect. I'm a mini epidemiologist. I'm a mini infection preventionist in training now.
But that's why I wanted you all here today, because there are lots of little things that we miss. I mean, when every time the media report, well, so and so's fully vaccinated, but they got a breakthrough virus, but it's rare. Stop it. It's not rare. It's happening more and more frequently, and there are reasons for it. And if you would explore the reasons for these breakthrough infections, reduced effectiveness of the vaccine over time, uh, people not being as careful as they should be once they have gotten these shots, all of that, I think it would cut down on infections because Israel is the most vaccinated country on earth. The people who are in the hospital over there are fully vaccinated. Stop it. And, and we go to buffets and all this stuff. Can you imagine Vegas? That's buffet heaven. So that's what I'm saying right now. I want to find out, okay, because now we just had the biggest music festival in the United States here in Chicago. They're saying, at least they're reporting, that no one really got COVID. Okay. But when you telling me, Dr. Deb, that they're not reporting all the numbers, I have to question that. So what in terms of policy, what what should be the messaging and what should be the policy? Because you see, I just came across this story. What is it? This is for you, Dr. Deb. They are going to, they're not going, some companies are mandating vaccines, but not for frontline workers. This is from Vax. Walmart, from Vox, excuse me. Walmart, Uber, and McDonald's are requiring office workers to get vaccinated. But stores, cars, and warehouses are a different story. The frontline workers don't have to get vaccinated. What's up with that, Dr. Deb?
I don't understand why you would have the people in the office be vaccinated when the people on the front lines are the ones who are coming in contact with the public. But so here's my real issue. Here's the real policy issue. And we're dealing with this problem in Flint on loudspeaker right now. Our health officer issued a mask mandate for kids in K through 12 and everybody in the K through 12 schools throughout the whole county. And people are up in arms. They had a board of health hearing. 200 people showed up in opposition. They said some of the just vilest, nastiest things. They were very aggressive, very verbally violent toward anybody who didn't agree with them. And I thought the problem is the issue of whether or not school children need to be masked shouldn't fall on the shoulders of the health officer. Mind you, I'm grateful that our health officer was willing to make that bold move. But the governor of Illinois issued a mask mandate for K through 12. Mm-hmm. So now it's about the local health department and the local school district figuring out how to support and enforce that, right? How to make sure that every child is able to honor it and has a mask and is able to wear it properly. And, because people are telling stories of these kids coming in with dirty masks. We've all seen it. We've seen kids that have come in with the same stain on their little school uniform pants 3-4 days in a row. So they've worn the same pants 3 or 4 days in a row. We know the same thing happens with masks, and we know that that's a problem, right? But the point is the policy came from the right level, the governor. And now the issue around how to enforce it, how to implement it, not just enforce, but how to implement it so that the intention is met, so that kids are protected, so that we have that synergistic mask effect with everybody in the space has a mask on. See, the power of everybody having on a mask is greater than individuals, the sum of just individuals wearing masks. But the problem that we have is in the absence of the policies happening at the right level, it shifts the responsibility over to other places. So now our health officer is under fire because our governor won't issue a statewide mask mandate for K through 12. That's where it's time for us to start looking. What are the actual policies that we need? This issue around mandating and requiring vaccination, it's a tricky one. I'm still grappling with that myself. I know from a public health perspective, if we mandate it, it will produce results. If we attach vaccination to things like flying, driver's license renewal, occupational eligibility, and things like that, 100% people would get vaccinated. I'm still grappling myself with, however, that a lot of what has people not be vaccinated, I feel like there's more work for us to do.
I do too.
There's more work to do. So I'm not taking a hard stance on forcing the shots into people's arms right now, because I don't feel like we've done a sufficient job of giving them information and resolving people's concerns. And a lot of the concerns that I hear are very valid. Some of them are crazy, right? People with the whole microchip stuff and things like that. I can't convince people out of that. But so some of it, I'm just like, well, if you believe that and your heels are dug in and you're not open to hearing anything else, then so be it. But some of the other concerns that I hear from people,
they're legit.
They're based on experience. Things that they've actually experienced in their own lives, their loved ones, et cetera, and it's valid.
Let me tell you, I think it is not very smart to just go on and get a shot because someone told you to, okay? I think you need to make an informed decision, whatever it is that you do. That's what needs to happen. And I think that there needs to be transparency, which we have not had fully. So, when they decide to be fully transparent and tell the whole truth about what's happening, including myself, feel better. But you got to be transparent, Deborah. Dr. Deb, yeah.
That come at different levels, though. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think people that took that first dose and that second dose or took the other vaccine that's only one dose really anticipated that they was going to need a booster. So I think that, honestly, if it came from, let's say, maybe the drug industry, that, hey, we know that this works right now, but not for how long, that level of transparency would not have the skeptics that were already skeptical before saying, okay, why would I get it now? And we don't even know how long it's going to work. So now we've taken those people that have not decided to be vaccinated that are now saying, okay, well, we need to know if getting this booster or after the booster is done, if that's really truly going to be it, or if now it's going to be an annual or they're going to add on another layer. We still have to remember that inside of the human mind, these were the same individuals told that if they stayed home for 2 weeks, the pandemic would be over. Mm-hmm. If they socially distanced, the pandemic would be over. If they wore masks, the pandemic would be over. Then, if we take tests, then the pandemic will be over. Oh, if everybody gets vaccinated or, if we can vaccinate half the country, then the pandemic will be over. So we have to understand these layers of doubt, including the fact that we have agencies that have not quite given the same recommendations or been consistent with their recommendations in regards to masking and everything else that has ensued. And when we're thinking about even our kids, we're talking about like, oh, yeah, go to school and mask up our kids. But there aren't any infection prevention guidelines, that are written across the board that can tell an educator, tell a nurse, tell a parent what it is they should be doing for their kids' mask situation and why across the board. We already had equity issues before issues like this existed, and I'm just concerned that this is going to continue to just, again, aggravate the situation and amplify the lack of resources that are in some areas, or the lack of privilege that we have to resources in some areas. And some kids are going to be left behind.
And you put this
because, again, they're not even addressing the dental issues.
Well, we're going to talk about that next week because your dental hygiene figures into your health with these masks. But I'm going to tell you what else you need to understand. When you have people questioning the very mission of Afghanistan, people who've lost family members, people who have had their lives altered by injury, and when you get sick, your whole family gets sick. When you become disabled or differently abled, your whole family has to make a whole lot of adjustments. There's a lot going on here. So just get some transparency here and let's have some real conversations and show me the data. I don't want to hear any more statements from the World Health Organization. I want data. I want you to give me the studies. please. So everybody, this weekend, Dr. Deb tomorrow will be on Reverend Al Sharpton's MSNBC show tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Do not miss her. Reverend Al Sharpton show, Dr. Deborah Verholden, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, everybody. And as soon as you see her, send MSNBC a mail, a email, a tweet, or something, and let them know you want to see her back on there again. Let's talk about Afghanistan on the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes.
Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna hire you to head up my PR team.
Come on now, no. Look, you gotta just, every week, every day I'm on the Santita Jackson Show.
The Jackson Show.
Yeah, that's
you
what
can
you
catch
do.
me every morning.
That's right.
Let me see. Trying to think of a major station because when I tune in on Facebook.
Well, no, just say on WCPT and on our Facebook page, so he can go. Yeah, right. Do that. Yeah, that's what you do. Seriously, that's how we cross pollinate. But I can't have you here, Dr. Deb, and not tell people you're gonna be on the show tomorrow. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I can't do that.
No, I appreciate it.
I can't do that. So get your team to make up a little board today. Get them to make up a little poster and give it to me and Dr. Knighton and other people you know so we can put it out there. A board with your face and Reverend Sharpton's face. Okay.
Look, you see her. She ain't gonna do all that.
She is.
I was like, I got a comms person. I might hit her up and be like,
yeah, get her to do it, please. Come on. Yeah.
I'm not very self-promoting or self-congratulatory.
Me either. I like to do the work, but you know what? I know in order to stay up on the air, that's it. I get it. I'm just saying to you though, that's nice.
No, I hear you because I say it to other people. I hear you.
It's all well and good.
Authentic cannot be willing to just own that and be more responsible for it too.
Because all that matters.
At the same time, while I complain about the lack of diversity in voices.
That's right.
Because a lot of times it's not even about race. They just keep picking the same old usual suspects.
And people do something. They work with the people they know and the people they see. And so now you have an opportunity to be seen. And so you drop everything you can while you are there. Because people want to follow you, and you let them know. If you had a regular hit on CK show or Robert show, you let people know that in every opportunity you can. But I'm gonna let you guys go because I've got to move on to this next topic. But I will be calling you later, lovely ladies.
Yes.
My beautiful, beautiful sisters. Love you, Dr. Knighton. Love you, Dr. Deb. Everybody, Dr. Deb.
Too. Talk to you later.
Absolutely. Dr. Deb will be on Reverend Al Sharpton Show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, obviously, about COVID-19. Cannot wait to hear what she's got to say. Janine Jackson, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, we're on Facebook Live. We're just not up on the air yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Oh, sure, of course.
So I don't have to bug Jim because I don't want to lose him. I don't want to lose him.
Oh, no.
Girl, he gets that world weary sound in his voice. Do you want me on the show?
Too much.
I'm like, yes, I do want you on the show. Do you mind? No, just call me. Call me at home. I'm like, okay.
Anytime. 6 a.m.
Anytime. But it's good. It's good to hear your voice, and thank you for being with us today.
Pardon me.
No. It's okay. Let me pull this out. And I'm going to have Phyllis on at 7:30. Well, 8:30 your time. She's going to be on right behind you. So I'm going to be repeating your pod. Now, what's the name of your podcast?
Counterspin.
The radio show is a podcast.
That's right. It's the same thing.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's what I'll do. 'Cause I know, girl, you know, I listen to it all. I've been following you forever.
I know. I know. We
Love
go
it.
way back.
Absolutely. So, okay. But
I
let
got
me,
a little frog in my throat.
me too, and I'm trying to figure out where it's come from. Like,
I
it just
know.
happened just now. Like,
And
oh,
you can't be going around coughing. Nobody wants to hear that.
girl, look, you can't cough, you can't sneeze.
Mm-mm.
Ugh,
Mm-mm.
you know, I've
You
just,
got to step outside with that.
well, and then everybody, when you come back in,
Don't sit by me.
don't
Yeah,
sit by me. And I am
exactly.
like, oh, come on, you guys. This is like
Exactly.
COVID presents in every possible way. Okay?
Exactly.
Just whatever you have in you, that's what happens. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Paul, I'm hearing that we've got some crackling. Do you know what that could be? Maybe you can bring me down just a bit. So let me know. Linda, how is it sounding? Not present when the guests speak, but only me. Okay. Okay, okay,
Okay,
okay.
so when you're not getting that crackling
Not
on
from
my
you,
end.
not on your end. It's
Okay.
just
Well, I'm glad because this is an old phone, and now see, I'm hearing it even as I speak
you do.
now.
Hmm. Okay.
My only other option. This is a landline. I do have a cell phone. I can't imagine why that would be any
No.
better.
I think because we're not hearing it with you. Let me, Paul, can you
Okay.
hear? How is the sound?
Sounds good on my end.
Okay, well, I know people on StreamYard are saying that I'm getting crackling again. Can you bring me down just a bit? And Ms. Jackson is saying that she is hearing some crackling through your phone or when you're speaking.
At first, I was thinking I wasn't hearing it when I was speaking, but maybe I'm not. Now I'm not. Just a low hum. It's really only when I'm not speaking that I'm
Okay.
getting that crackle.
Okay, well, you know,
So whatever works for you.
well, you know, I just
30.
wanted to work for you and for everybody else. Okay, so needed to work for you, and so okay, who is it? Robin says lower inputs and raise outputs. Hmm. Have you thought about that, Paul? This is one of our engineers who's listening during the show.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. If you want to text me, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. But I want to hear your voices today. 773-763-9278. And I wanted you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page over on Facebook. And you can also stream us live. You can check us out on WCPT's Facebook page as well, and on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe there, and everybody, please like and share this show today. Like and share, like and share. We're talking about Afghanistan in this hour. What are the press saying? What are they putting in? What are they leaving out? Are they giving you the full story? Are they giving you the context? Uh, I mean, I think if we had the full context of Afghanistan and what they're dealing with and what they dealt with under American occupation, maybe we wouldn't be so surprised with the collapse of not the Afghanistan government, but the collapse of the United States over there. We're the ones who are having to leave. China's there, Russia's there. Something to think about. So let's get to a few of these headlines so that we can talk with Janine Jackson of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting about what's happening with the media and Afghanistan. Chicago will have a high of 85 degrees, mostly sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 90 degrees, mostly sunny. The Dow closed down 66 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 15 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 5.5 points. In Major League Baseball, the Yankees were triumphant over the Twins, 7-5. The Cubs will be playing the Royals today. And, well, the Sox fell to the Oakland A's, 5-4. Everybody, with mourning the loss of Chicago police officer Ella French, killed just a few weeks ago at a traffic stop in the Inglewood community here. Thousands watched online, thousands attended, were praying for her family today. She was just 29 years of age, everybody. We're now seeing that a majority of Americans, according to this Associated Press poll, uh, do not agree with the Afghanistan conflicts. A significant majority of Americans doubt that the war in Afghanistan was worthwhile, even as the United States is more divided over President Joe Biden's handling of foreign policy and national security. This, is according to the Associated Press. Roughly two-thirds of Americans said they did not think America's longest war was worth fighting, according to. And what was left behind? Well, billions of weaponry from the United States, everybody, and a promise from the Taliban to ban heroin. They said, we will no longer have narcotics produced here. We are assuring our countrymen, according to the Taliban spokesman, we are assuring our countrymen and women and the international community we will not have any narcotics produced from now on. Nobody's going to get involved in the heroin trade. Nobody can be involved in drug smuggling. The Texas House Democrats, well, the quorum has been reached, everybody, after having been threatened with civil arrest by the Texas State Supreme Court, signed into effect by the Texas Speaker of the House. Well, enough Democrats have returned to achieve a quorum, and now you will have more voting restrictions, new voting restrictions that will be passed by the majority Republican state legislature, everybody. U.S. officials are reviewing the possibility that the Moderna vaccine is linked to a higher risk of myocarditis. It's a heart disease that is beginning to present in younger adults, more adults than previously believed. It's an investigation that will be ongoing and it will involve the FDA and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, everybody. Progressives, they're applauding President Biden's erasure of student loan debt for those with severe disabilities. That's right. More than 300,000 people will have $5.8 billion in federal student aid wiped out. Now, progressives are saying we need to do it for everybody. What do you think, everybody? Highly religious Americans are less likely to believe intelligent life exists on other planets, and rain fell in Greenland. Why is that notable? Well, it's the first time since they've been keeping records that this has happened, and Greenland is cold. It generally snows there, everybody. Think about it. What's going on? What's going on with our weather? What's going on with Afghanistan? Well, you tell me. What do you think is happening? What do you think is happening? Do you agree with how Chris this morning, he said, yeah, we need to be out, but the way that we've done it, don't like it. But what are we being told? What are we being told? Are we being told? Are we being given enough information about why we were there in the first place? Uh, what happened while we were there? Mm. What has been erased? Well, when I want to find out these things, I go to fairness and accuracy in reporting. And I also go to the Counter Spin podcast. The producer and host is with us right now, the program director for Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. I want you to please check out and become a fan of, as I am, Counterspin, that is produced and hosted by Janine Jackson. Janine Jackson, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, it's always a joy to be with you, to have you here. Okay, we are seeing we're seeing a lot that there was not a lot of transparency, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me, talk to me. I mean, because when I look at the major newspapers, they're all giving us the same line, and yet I'm talking to Gold Star families, Janine Jackson, and they are devastated. They're saying, wait a minute, we went in there with one mission in mind, but we see something else has happened while we were there. Something else is happening right now. Um, the State
Right.
Department cannot even guarantee safe passage of Americans and our allies to the airport. Help me. What are we looking at with Afghanistan?
Well, we are looking at a lot of calamity and hardship today, just in the efforts to make this withdrawal happen. But this is on top of 20 years of cruelty, of drone strikes, of killings of civilians, and of a failed project. I mean, after 20 years of this U.S. invasion and occupation of Afghanistan, Afghanistan is now at the bottom on indicators of health and well-being, and by the way, on women's rights. You know, so the line that we're getting from much of the mainstream media that if the U.S. leaves, things are going to go bad in Afghanistan is painfully absurd. Things have been going bad in Afghanistan for decades now, and the U.S. Have a lot to blame for that.
Well, we hear about American loss of life. I think about more than 2,400 people. What happened on the Afghan side?
Exactly. Well, that's a question you would come away with from reading a lot of the coverage or watching the television coverage, because those casualties of people in Afghanistan and in Pakistan as well are largely off the page. We're talking about the Brown University Cost of War Project puts it at 71,000 civilians killed in Afghanistan during this U.S. occupation. Those people are largely missing from the story. And in fact, if you just look at who gets to speak, which is something we always do at FAIR, look at news coverage and see just who literally is getting to speak, you find that Afghan civilians and regular Afghan people rarely have their voices heard. And how would things be different if we had them? So there's a lot of forgetfulness in the U.S. media, a lot of forgetfulness, for example, that in 2001, in October, the Taliban indicated that they were willing to talk about handing over Osama bin Laden.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's off the page now. You know, the selective vision of just the U.S. determining that they get to be in charge of other countries' governments, of other countries' leadership, that's just taken as a given in corporate news media's conversation. And that's really a bizarre concept if you think about it, you know, that the U.S. has the right to invade and occupy another country simply because they don't like the leadership that that country has chosen. The U.S. really needs to end that kind of arrogance. And although we can see the withdrawal being handled messily, that's not to say that it should not be happening and should not have happened, in fact, long ago.
We're talking with Janine Jackson, the producer, host of the podcast, Counterspin. That's right. She's not in a fact-free zone. She's in a spin-free zone. Counterspin, from fairness and accuracy in reporting. We're talking about what's happened, who's shaping the narrative. Because I don't see peace activists on TV.
Right.
I don't see people who even question official policy. And it's very interesting to me that the president is taking a real hit. Well, you did the wrong thing, but you did it the wrong way. Okay. But I get the sense that because that the military industrial complex is not too pleased with him, because they were just making money hand over fist.
Exactly. And they were getting editorial support in the form of newspapers that would simply always endorse a re-upping of the war, more war, you know, as if it really were a chess game, as if real people weren't on the other end of those drone strikes. You know, we see our major newspapers talking about a hasty exit from Afghanistan, where we've been for 20 years. There's no such thing as a hasty exit at this point, you know. But there is a sort of understanding and acceptance among much mainstream news media that its endless state of war is of benefit, that it's okay. And we know, you know, for some people, looking at their stock portfolio, it is very okay. And that does, I think, just as where you started, when we see these roundtable conversations, we see generals, we see politicians, but we don't often see people who you would call diplomats or peace activists or people who argue as vociferously for the end of war as some of these talking heads do for its endless continuation.
I want to know who are the pundits? I mean, are they who is shaping the narrative here? I mean,
well, what we often find whenever we look at sources on TV news, for example, we find a high representation of government officials, first and foremost. And then we find journalists talking to other journalists. So it becomes a real circular kind of thing. And then the tiniest little fraction is all of those people who might have a sustained and substantial criticism of the socioeconomic status quo of things as they are, so that's labor advocates, peace advocates, feminists, environmentalists, all of those public interest voices we find show up as a tiny, tiny fraction of the sources. And what it mainly is powerful people talking to journalists and journalists talking to one another.
What do you think, everybody? Call me at 773 763 9278. 773 763 9278. We're talking with Janine Jackson, the host and producer of the podcast Counterspin. She is the program director for Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Has the reporting of Afghanistan, has it been accurate? Has it been fair? And if it's not fair and accurate, Janine Jackson, how does that impact us? I mean, I get the sense when I talk to some of these Gold Star families who are really hurting right now, Janine. They're hurting because they feel that they were misled. Not all of them, but a lot of them, a whole lot of them. What happens when when you find out 20 years in that maybe it wasn't what we thought it was?
Well, exactly. And it's so much, and many of us remember, part of what I resent is the kind of rewriting of history. It makes it seem as though everyone was supportive of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. Well, we remember that everyone was not. Some of us were marching in the street opposing this invasion and occupation before it started. So one thing that I think media's narrow vision distorts is public opinion, is our very understanding about how many people, may agree with us in our opposition to endless U.S. wars, for example. Media can distort that image and make us feel more alone in those views than we actually are, so they sort of mislead us about ourselves and what the public thinks. And then just the kind of selective reporting of history. Like I say, the Taliban's early indications of interest in extraditing Osama bin Laden, that's just conveniently blipped out of the narrative. So, you hear a same story again and again. The U.S. Wanted to deny al-Qaeda safe haven. Well, al-Qaeda hasn't been in Afghanistan for 19 years now, but that's still in the narrative. We wanted to save Afghan women. Well, as I say, women are, if anything, worse off now than they were 20 years ago, but that still stays in the narrative. So media keep telling a story that is so out of keeping with the reality of what's been done and what's happening now that, of course, people who experienced it immediately feel betrayed, feel confused by what they see on the television and not matching up with their experience. That's how anyone feels who's actually seen personally a situation like this, like a war zone, and then read the newspaper account that makes it seem as though everything's working perfectly. And one thing I would add that I think is also being missed, we're talking about ground troop removal. This does not mean the end of drone strikes. over Afghanistan because, we call that counterterrorism. We can say we're not at war with a country and still be dropping bombs on them from the sky. So language is another way that corporate media can mislead us and confuse us about what's actually going on.
Are there any news organizations that might behave more credibly than others? Mark Hay wants to know about NPR. He said, "Is NPR, is the BBC? Are there any other? Are these outlets and are there others that report a more balanced, fuller, uh, truer story, truer representation of what's happening?"
Well, I do encourage looking at public broadcasting, not necessarily because it's better always, but it's just sometimes less shouty and people get to speak longer and you might get to hear just a more sensible kind of conversation. But in general, what we encourage is trying to, first of all, read widely. It isn't that you shouldn't read the Washington Post or the New York Times. They can do, very substantive reporting. You should get some of that. But read widely. Read some overseas sources and dig out some independent news media, something that is not corporate sponsored, so something on your public non-commercial, maybe it's your college radio station. Dig up things that would describe themselves as independent news media, and then read a few of them so that you're getting a range of views. There's no magic to it. There's no substitute for informing yourself independently as a citizen and not simply watching a half hour of news and imagining you've got the whole story.
Well, what are we getting when we're watching the news? Because we're from the generation where you settled down and you watched Walter Cronkite and Roger Mudd, and
Exactly.
and at least
you felt like you were getting all you needed to know in that half hour.
kind of, sort of. Maybe my background is just a little different, but at least you felt you had some people who were just a little bit more credible. I mean, because now everybody is on television. Everybody's got an opinion, including the anchors. The arched eyebrow, the rant. I'm like, I don't want all that from you. Just tell me what happened. I'll make up my mind.
Right. Well, television is much more easy, more manipulative in that way, where they completely control the image and you can't really rewind it and go back the way you can with a newspaper article, and kind of look at it again an hour later. Visual media make that much more difficult. And, we know that news sources were never really neutral. They didn't really include all voices, but it is the case that commercialism and sort of corporatism has turned news into just, some of it looks like a game show. Some of it looks like, a Hollywood movie. There definitely is a different feeling to it. And again, my response to that is look for things online, look for things that you can pause and think about and rewatch, and mainly, don't believe everything you read. Once you read one outlet on a story, follow the same story onto another outlet, follow it into a print newspaper, and give yourself kind of a number of angles on the same story. And I think that's a helpful way to go at it.
I've got one more minute. What should we be looking out for as we move? The story just continues to grow because we're still trying to get people out. We don't know. And then we might have hearings to find out what happened. The president saying that I didn't get the right information. So what should
exactly. Well, let's look out for the Afghan people being put at the center of the story. We should not have more concern about imaginary future bloodshed from the Taliban. We as U.S. citizens should be much more thinking about how we can avoid bloodshed that is being carried out in our name. Only Afghans can end the war in Afghanistan, and we should be about making it as possible for them to do that and honoring those choices that they make. That's what we can do from where we sit.
Honoring the choices that sovereign people make. Imagine that. love, fairness, and accuracy in reporting. Everyone, they need your support. Freedom is not free, and they need your support. So please go to Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting and give them your support, lend them your support because they surely deserve it. They help us to see what's really going on because we need to analyze the news. We need to analyze the people who make the analysis because many of us sign up for the military. We give our money all in the name of what we've been told on TV or on radio. And you need to really know the truth. And if we're going to have a constitutional republic, Janine Jackson,
15.
it requires that we get involved. This is not an easy form of
Absolutely.
government. You got to know.
Absolutely.
Blessings to you. Everybody, please check out Counterspin. It's a great podcast. She's the producer, host, Janine Jackson, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Sending you and Jim Narekas much love. And your grown baby. How about that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Always a joy. You're a jewel. Thank you. Institute for Policy Studies. What's going on, everybody? Talking about Afghanistan. Back in just a minute. Thank you, Janine Jackson. Oh, Renee, you should call in No More Drones. I like that. Critical thinking is important. In fact, it's paramount. If we do not think critically, all kinds of things happen in our name and with our bodies and with our children's bodies. I can't shake, these conversations I've had with some of these families over the past few days. And I haven't pushed for them to be on the show because I just, number one, I think they need to know someone's thinking about them, right? But they're in a lot of pain because they feel that they've been misled. They read the newspaper, they saw the headline, they listened to the radio, but so we have to. We owe it to this really to the preservation of the republic to get the right information, and you're going to have to demand it. You're going to have to demand getting news sources from someone and some entities other than the corporations who they support. Okay, Phyllis Bennis, how are you?
Santita, hi. It's great to be with you today.
It's great to be with you. You caught me mid rant. So
that's okay.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes.
What were you ranting about?
Well, I'm just saying, I think that we really need to become more actively engaged, in
the world.
In the
indeed.
world, understanding, other people's perspectives, questioning our news sources. We're not doing enough of that. I think that what we're doing is we've become dispirited. More and more Americans do not trust the news, and that is.
Right.
I said, wait a minute, I hear you, but I just want the people in the news organizations to know that does not help you.
No, it's absolutely right. I mean, the other problem, because of social media, what people think is, quote, the news, has become so narrowly attuned to becoming an echo chamber of what they already believe.
Oh, yeah.
That anything they hear that's outside of that, they immediately assume cannot be true, because everything else they hear is framed by however the algorithms recognize their interests and their approach, and they get more of that, and everything else is just not part of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's awful. Everybody wants an echo chamber. I'm like, come on, you guys.
Yeah.
That is not the way real life does not work that way. It doesn't. It really, really doesn't. So,
right.
I think that's becoming an even bigger problem. People don't want to talk. We want to fight. I'm like, come on, you guys, let's engage each other. I don't mind a disagreement, but goodness, what is it? It's.
Yeah, it's like that thing about you can disagree about your opinions, but you can't really disagree about the facts.
Not the facts.
The problem is,
not the
people
facts.
just don't acknowledge there are facts.
Yes.
It's like nothing is a fact. There's opinion is all there is, and I have my opinion, you have yours, so we live in different worlds.
That's right, and you're dumb.
I was just hearing this morning some public health people talking about the COVID spikes in Alabama in particular, and people, almost all are unvaccinated, and their response is they still don't want to get it if they survive. They still don't believe that there's something called COVID.
30.
They still don't want to get the vaccine.
Well, now black people
even while
believe
they're
it.
fighting for every breath.
But did you see in New York, only 25% of the black community have been vaccinated?
Is it still that low?
Oh, it's still that low. I said that was. I'll send it to you. It's a New York Times article I saw last week.
Yeah.
And
although I bet a bunch of that is about access still,
no,
rather than
Mm-mm.
resistance.
No. I'll let you read this article. No, it's
Okay.
it's a grave mistrust. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. The Santita Jackson and Friends channel on Facebook. Please, everybody, like and share, and go to my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show, and like and subscribe. Let's continue this discussion about Afghanistan because we need to know what happened. We need to know how we got here. How did we get here? The Institute for Policy Studies have so much respect for this institution. And one of their leading fellows, indeed one of the leading scholars and voices, really in the human rights space internationally, is Phyllis Bennis. She is the director of their New Internationalism Project. Brilliant scholar, brilliant and earnest and dedicated activist. Someone who's really working to make the world a better place. And thanks to your work, it is getting better and better every day. Talk to me, Phyllis Bennis, about are we learning enough about what happened, what the occupation was like for those who were occupied? Do we even look at this as an occupation?
Well, thanks, Santita. Thanks for that lovely introduction. We're not hearing enough. We have never heard enough. We don't know very much as a country about Afghans. We know about Afghanistan in the context of our war in Afghanistan. We don't know about the people who live there, the people who have lived through not just the 20 years of this war, but 40 years of war, much of which the United States was directly involved in. And it's a very, very difficult thing because one of the things that happens is that there are historical realities, cultural realities, political history, cultural assumptions that shape life in Afghanistan the way they shape life in every country. And because we don't know them, we make judgments and we make decisions that are so out of touch that they are bound to fail. And I'll give you one really big one that I'm afraid came out of absolute ignorance. Even aside from the broad questions of why the U.S. decided to go to war as a response to the horrific crime that happened on 9/11, there was another way. They chose to go to war. But the way they chose to go to war was, first, we will just wipe out the government. We will overthrow it and destroy it. And then we will impose a new government. We'll impose a government that's democratic. So obviously, everybody in Afghanistan is going to like that. Who wouldn't, right? So we're going to put together a government in a box and drop it off in Kabul. And that government is going to have a president and a parliament, and it's going to look like a European or a U.S. democracy. So what could be wrong with that? Well, let's start with the fact that what could be wrong with it is that the years, hundreds of years, and indeed thousands of years in Afghanistan, long before it was called Afghanistan, long before it was an independent modern nation state, this was a country, a province, a region, an area, peoples whose understanding of power was rooted at the local level. So power is in the family, in the clan, in the tribe, not in the capital of some modern nation state hundreds of miles away. That has never been the case in Afghanistan. So when the U.S. imposes a government that's based on centralized power, concentrating power in this capital, and puts in a staff made up overwhelmingly of Afghan exiles who had not lived in the country for more than 2 decades, had no connections to what the culture was by that time, what it meant that people had lived under Taliban rule for 5 years and under terrible conditions of civil war for 8 years before that, and before that had been fighting against Soviet troops, that it was a very different country than anything they had left. They didn't know the country at all. This was what was imposed on the people of Afghanistan when the U.S. overthrew the Taliban back in 2001. In response to that, or as part of that, they created a military, right? They created the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Air Force. And the idea was these are the national forces who will defend this government, defend their country. Well, the problem was those two things were very different. Defending their country might have been something that was possible, but country even was defined much more narrowly to smaller areas. But defending this government that was known overwhelmingly for corruption and incompetence was never going to be on the agenda of the people in this military force because it didn't represent them. They had no connection to it. It was imposed on them by a foreign occupying power. And so when the remnants of that military force, which never amounted to 300,000, despite U.S. officials who like to claim it because there were that many on the payroll, when they stopped fighting and said, you know what, there's a long Afghan tradition, a long Afghan cultural tradition of negotiating out of most situations. You only fight when you have to. They negotiated surrenders. They negotiated power sharing at the local level with the Taliban instead of fighting because they were not being asked to fight for their country. They were being asked to fight for a government that did not represent them, that they did not want to be in power, that they had had no choice in creating. And if people understood that, I think we would all say, well, why would they have fought for that? We certainly wouldn't fight for that. If some other government, some other power, some other country had imposed on us a government in their image that we didn't want, why would we be expected to fight for that? So the surprise that we hear expressed from U.S. military officials, from U.S. political officials, in the media, from the pundits, why is it that these people wouldn't fight for their country? Why didn't we know that the Taliban was so strong? Well, the Taliban wasn't all that strong. They didn't have to be, because in most cases it turned out they didn't need to fight. So the complications of that, as troubling as the reality is of what the Taliban has been in the past, of how it treated women in particular, it's horrific. And yet, people in Afghanistan in 1996, when the Taliban won the civil war, and on some levels today as well, will accept the Taliban because they are an indigenous force. They are Afghans. They're not representing some other outside force. And even for people who don't like the extreme repression that comes with the Taliban's version of Islamic or religious law, it may be for some people, obviously not for all, not for people who have lived under very new conditions in Kabul for the last 20 years, women in Kabul in particular, who will pay a very high price, I'm afraid. But for other people, many of them see the Taliban as more representative of their culture, the conservatism of their rural culture in particular, than would be true for U.S.-backed forces. That's something that we just are not hearing about, that we didn't talk much about during the years of the U.S. war. And it's something that I think we're going to continue to pay a price for not knowing, for not understanding, for not learning.
Do you think that we really understand how colonialism and how imperialism is viewed overseas, and that we are viewed as the great imperialists, as the great colonizers, particularly in that context?
That's such an important question, and I think the easy answer is no. I don't think we understand it. The broader question is, what do we have to do to change that? And that's a harder one. That's a harder question. I think that there was a piece, actually, we're seeing bits and pieces of that discussion emerging in a little bit of the corporate media. There was a piece I read the other day, and I'm trying to remember where, but in one of the mainstream papers that was sort of looking at this question of why do we assume that nationalism, which has become so virulent in the United States in a really negative way, but certainly is a powerful force in this country. All the various versions of it, from American exceptionalism, all of the ways in which we assume that our needs are shared by everyone in the world who understands that we are the most important country. Why do we assume that nationalism is not something that other people in other countries reflect as well? So it's this notion. There was a very important speech, the Nobel Prize acceptance speech from then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan back in, I guess it was 2002. Maybe it was even 2001, I'm not sure. No, 2002. When he said, among other things, that the challenges facing most people in the world on September 10th of 2001, and he named poverty, pandemics, a whole range of challenges facing people all around the world. He said those challenges did not go away after the attacks of 9/11. And I thought that was so important. In fact, Reverend William Barber, in a piece he just did in The Atlantic a day or two ago, quoted that speech from Kofi Annan. And it's a recognition that while the attacks of September 11th were a huge crime, with thousands of people killed, it was an enormous crime. It was not something that by itself changed the world. Other countries, other peoples have gone through enormous crises like that, enormous horrific crimes, enormous horrific natural disasters of various sorts, and they don't necessarily change the world. The United States decided that that crime against us was going to change the entire world, and that the response would be to force the world to go to war. And I think that understanding that that's not how the rest of the world sees what happens here is part of what it takes to understand how others perceive colonial forces, imperialist forces in their own countries. The claim that was made about Iraq, that U.S. troops would be welcomed with rice and flowers in the street, that was never going to happen. That was the fever dream of neoconservative interventionists, from Dick Cheney to Donald Rumsfeld to George Bush and the whole gang of them. That was never going to happen. The same was true in Afghanistan. Clearly, there were many, many people in Afghanistan, particularly many women, who were furious with how they were governed by force when the Taliban was in power. That doesn't necessarily mean that what they wanted, what they chose, was a U.S.-led war that led to 20 years of U.S. airstrikes that killed civilians, U.S. attacks on wedding parties, U.S. attacks on funerals. This was not something that led to the freedom and liberation of Afghan women, as we are so often led to believe. One of the ways that I think history gets distorted, and that the media distorts it, is that we take the information or the opinions of the easiest people to reach and start to believe ourselves, and at least pretend to believe, that somehow reflects everybody. So in Afghanistan, the way that plays out, you had women in Kabul who, for the first time since the overthrow of the Taliban, were indeed able to go to university and get jobs, not on equal with men any more than it's equal here, but a serious improvement in their lives. Middle-class women, educated women. But we have to keep in mind, 75% of the people of Afghanistan don't live in cities, any cities, not in Kabul. They don't live in cities. They live in tiny, isolated villages. And those women gain nothing from the U.S. years of occupation, except some were killed in airstrikes, etc. And if you look, one way to measure that, when the U.S. took over after throwing out the Taliban, under the Taliban, the ranking of Afghanistan on the global levels of infant mortality was number one. Afghanistan was the worst place in the world for a child to be born and survive to her first birthday. Today, after 20 years of U.S. occupation, Afghanistan is still number one. Still number one. And that, to me, has always been symbolic of the failure of this claim that the U.S. goal in Afghanistan was to liberate the women. You know, this was the claim of Laura Bush, who took up the claim to justify her husband's war, and so many others. And unfortunately, I think many women in this country believed it, that this was necessary to liberate the women of Afghanistan. Women have had to struggle in Afghanistan for generations. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a vibrant women's movement that made some real gains that were then reversed later in many of the social upheavals in the country. But this notion that somehow it was going to take U.S. occupation, you know, there was a statement a day or two ago saying Afghan women never asked for airstrikes. That was not their understanding of what it was going to take to change the very misogynist components of Afghan culture. That was always going to happen from inside, not something that can be imposed from outside. That's the other part of colonialism and imperialism that we so rarely talk about, so rarely understand even here, is that it's not about what we can impose in terms of reflecting our values or our understanding of what democracy looks like, what women's rights looks like. It's not our choice. I may not like the notion of a religious government at all, but it's not my call. I'm not an Afghan. I don't get to say. And the notion that my government, using my tax money and operating in my name, is imposing a sectarian-based government in Iraq, creating governments around the world in its own image, it's just not only wrong, but it's guaranteed to fail.
Well,
it's guaranteed to fail.
And Phyllis Bennis, the director of the new Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies, as a Black woman, as a Black American woman, it is galling to me to see people become very emotional about women's rights in Afghanistan. And it takes a Black woman 579 days in the United States to earn what a white man makes in 365. And our indigenous sisters, it takes them more time. It takes Hispanic women more time. It's just...
That's such an important component to what gets left out of this debate. How long did it take before women had the right to vote? You know,
it's been 100 years. That's it. This American project is more than 400 years old. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, and we know that they have a trove of minerals, trillions of dollars worth of minerals. We know that we have 22 tons of their gold. Now, my thing is, they still have our people over there. Are we going to give them their gold so we can just kind of like quid pro quo this, or it's something? It just sounds crazy to me.
I mean, we're hearing now that the Biden administration is making a commitment to restarting humanitarian aid. That's good, but there's no clarity about how they're going to do it because they're not going to do it in a way that empowers the Taliban. Well, the problem is if the Taliban does emerge as the sole component of the government, which is still not clear. There's still negotiations underway with some of these warlords that fought on the U.S. side in the past, were vicious, misogynist warlords with terrible histories. One of the three who was negotiating is a former warlord by the name of Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, who was one of the Mujahideen in the 1980s that was armed by the U.S., fought on the U.S. side against the Soviet Union, then fought against the Taliban, then with the Taliban, has brought his powerful militia onto every side you could imagine in Afghan politics. And he's now reemerged, negotiating with the Taliban about some kind of power sharing. But this guy was not the Taliban, right? He was on our side. he's the one who invented the horrific, I don't even know what you call it, weapon attack of using acid thrown in the faces of young women who have the temerity to think they deserve to get an education.
Oh, my God.
He invented that when he was in college in the early 1970s. So that's who we in the U.S. allied with in Afghanistan. And then we go to war with the Taliban on the basis that they are oppressing women. So there's an enormous level of hypocrisy in there, an enormous level. And then you get to the hypocrisy of who are we to speak of how to do women's equality, how to respect human rights, given our violations of human rights. It doesn't make it not true that Taliban treatment of women is horrific. It is also true, but that speaks to what is it going to take to build real solidarity with the people, with the women of Afghanistan, so they can wage their own struggle on their own terms for their own goals.
Because isn't it
the
possible?
irony is that while we do know that Afghanistan has rare earth minerals, and of course the location of Afghanistan make it a key point for oil and gas pipelines, although probably for the better, Afghanistan doesn't itself have oil and gas. But I actually don't believe that those interests, those economic interests, which the U.S. is clearly so eager to exploit, I don't think those were actually the reason for the invasion of Afghanistan. I think it had far more to do with vengeance after 9/11, to mobilize anger on the part of the American people in order to set the stage for the real strategic target, which was Iraq. It's a terrible thing to think that the destruction of a country, the 20 years of war, hundreds of thousands of Afghan casualties, was for vengeance. But in fact, I think it actually was. I don't think this was even a strategic target for imperialist interests in its own right. It was a derivative target.
Well, you know, I've got a couple minutes left here, and many of us don't hear about the hundreds of thousands of lives that have been lost, that have been negatively impacted. You put forth the idea of reparation, if you will. In the final
Absolutely.
2 minutes, please make that case.
The U.S. war has created enormous levels of devastation across Afghanistan. Over 100,000 civilians, over 100,000 people killed, 70,000 civilians killed, destruction of towns and villages, destruction of land, in all those ways. And the notion that ending the war means you simply pick up and leave begs the question of what does it mean to have destroyed a country, shredded the social fabric, just destroyed lives in so many ways. To me, it means that we have obligations. We have obligations in Iraq. We have obligations in Somalia. We have obligations in Haiti. We have obligations in so many countries where U.S. military force has made things worse and not better, and have then been abandoned. And what it means is not so easy. What it means is massive debts that we owe to the people of Afghanistan. How to make good on those debts is not easy because, for example, right now we have a government coming in that nobody knows what it's going to be like. Is it a government that even has the capacity to deal with large amounts of money, let alone the avoiding the traps of the levels of incompetence and corruption that characterized the last government in Afghanistan? At the same time, there's been such suppression of civil society that it's not clear there are domestic organizations in Afghanistan that can absorb the huge amounts of money that we would owe. You know, the U.S. spent $20 billion in 1 year, just last year, on the war in Afghanistan. We should be paying at least that to help rebuild the country. But billions of dollars is such enormous amounts of money that even figuring out how to transmit it is a challenge. Do we do it through the United Nations? There's contradictions there, but that might end up being the best way to do it. The problem is so often if the U.S. takes any responsibility, it almost never is in terms of reparations or compensation for its actual obligations, its moral obligations as well as political debts. So often, if there's any effort to make good on anything like that, it ends up being done in such a way that it's designed to increase U.S. power and influence in the country. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. The U.S. should not be able to choose how Afghans use the money that the U.S. owes them as a people to rebuild their country. They should be able to choose how to rebuild in their own image, in their own ways. The problem is how to do that isn't obvious. It's one thing to say it as a matter of principle. I don't have a good answer.
I got 10
but
seconds.
I think we have to start being really creative in figuring out with Afghans themselves how to make good on that, because it is a moral debt at the national level, unlike, what we've had in the past. We have destroyed countries, and we have an obligation to help them rebuild themselves.
Phyllis Bennis, everybody, the director of the New Internationalism Project at the Institute for Policy Studies. Thank you so much for giving us some clarity, and we'll at least have a better idea of what we're looking at. Phyllis Bennis, blessings to you. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for being with us on the Santita Jackson Show today. God bless.
Thank you, Santita. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, enjoy you so much. Thank you. Oh, boy. All right, everybody. I hope that you all have had a good show. And you know what? I did post that article so that you all could see. And Phyllis Bennis, I will send it to you. Why 28% of Black people have gotten the vaccine. I will send it to you. I will send it to you because
great.
well, because those who are unvaccinated by choice, there are a lot of reasons for it. And
right, in the Black community, there's a lot more legitimate reasons than anywhere else, for sure.
Well, also, but remember, you look at the Japanese. Well, they have issues with with the West coming in on them with bad medicine too. They had a horrible time with MMR 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But I just think that we need to have some bigger conversations about our medicines and about our health, about universal single payer. I mean, these are the things to me that we got to look at all of those things because
and how they're connected.
And all medicines don't work for everybody. I mean, there's just a lot going on here. Now Moderna, that just came out this morning, now they're finally conceding that myocarditis, which is an irreversible heart disease, they're seeing it in young people after this. So it's like, wait a minute, I've been to Africa and too many other places in the world, too many times to say that I'm an anti-vaxxer. No, I believe in having as many layers of protection against these viruses out here as I can get. But I got to make sure that they work. And you need to have a conversation with people like they're grown and like they're sovereign. Not when you take Henrietta Lacks cells and you make billions of dollars off of them, and you will not give her, not you, but then, and Big Pharma will not give her family a dime of that money.
Right.
Oh, no.
Right. No, there are real reasons for it. I think the role that African American doctors right now are playing is the critical factor in turning that around. It's not who's trusted on those medical questions, and the legacy of racism in medical training, of course, means that we have such a shortage of Black doctors.
Oh my gosh!
That everywhere you look for partial solutions, you see contradictions to it.
Well, also having
But I'm so glad that you're looking at that question, though, and how it's linked to the international stuff. It's so crucial.
Well, it's all of that. And having a full discussion and full disclosure on injuries. Because that happens with everything. I mean, I have someone who's been taking high blood pressure medicine. And she's a social drinker and all that, but now her kidneys are failing. No one told her that as she was taking this high blood pressure medication that you can't do this or this, or you need to be more moderate in this, more temperate in this. This stuff happens all the time. So I'm just saying, we need to have a fuller discussion. Because the fact is, it's not white people have been more reluctant. Because there's also great mistrust of our institutions. And if we don't look at that, I think we're missing the boat on a lot, because there's just so much mistrust out here. You saw that guy who drove up to, what is it, to the Library of Congress yesterday?
Yesterday? Oh, yeah. I saw
Well,
that.
you're in D.C. He said the South is
Yeah.
coming after you, Joe. I said, what? The South? Where'd you go?
Yeah, no, this is a hell of a time.
Oh, boy, it is. It is.
But I'm
But,
so grateful for the work you do.
oh, I'm
And your
grateful for
dad,
you.
it was so amazing seeing him those couple of times when he was here, with the Poor People's Campaign.
Oh, yeah.
And with your brother, Jonathan was there.
Oh, yeah.
It was so, the welcome he got was amazing.
Really?
When Reverend Barber introduced him, the crowd just roared. It was really something.
Bless
It
well,
was really something.
bless it. Well, he is going to go out feet first. I can tell you that
Yeah,
right
hopefully
now.
not anytime soon.
No, no, no. This is, at the end of the day, after we've seen him on stage, he's my daddy.
I know.
That's.
I know. I got to say, when I saw him these last two times,
Uh-huh.
I had seen him, I guess a couple of months ago he was here, and it was like, oh, God, he really doesn't sound good.
Mm-hmm.
But these two times, he sounded so strong. His voice was clearer. It was really kind of great.
Well, thank you. Well, we're trying to get him to focus on therapy. This is something that he does not want to do, but it's said, hey, it's what you have to do, okay? Which means your therapy has to come first, and then you can do everything else. Trying to get him to do that
first, then you can go out and do your politics.
you can do whatever it is that you want to do. You can't really preach anymore because that's really a young man's game. He doesn't have the stamina, but he has the stamina and the mental and intellectual acuity to do so many things. And so we just try to keep him involved. We try, Phyllis. We try.
Yeah. No,
we try, and
it's so heartwarming to see him out there with us.
Well, it's going to mean a whole lot that you feel that way because he has nothing but the highest regard for you, the highest regard.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Oh no, it's
I'm so
true.
glad to hear that. Yeah, I tried to sort of get up to say hello, and it was like I couldn't push my way up into the front. So
you should have called me, girl, because Shelley would have reached out for you.
I will next time.
Yeah,
call your daddy's cell and tell him to look to his right, and I'm 5 rows back.
I'm telling you, he would have said, where is she? Because he would get on the microphone and say, Phyllis Bennett, where are you?
Yeah,
and you'd
I
be
don't
like,
do that.
oh, I know you'd be like mortified, right? Like, oh,
Reverend Barber does that every once in a while. I'm like, stop.
No, we need to know who you are. I have to tell you this, as we go, it's I always want to get more women talking about these issues because the space is so male. It's populated with so many men, and I love men.
Yeah.
I love men, but
I love a few of them, not too many.
Well, but you know what?
Yeah,
sometimes, no. I mean, we're having fun here.
Yes,
But
you do.
I want Phyllis. Would you just let her sit here? No, she should sit here. She should be in this conversation because also your approach. We have a different approach, and we have a different set of life experiences that inform. Why we think the way that we do, and I think that and all that we bring to the table. All that you bring to the discussions, all of these human rights discussions, wherever you see any kind of abuse, I just want you to know that I really have so much regard and respect for you, and I appreciate all the work that you've done everywhere, wherever you've seen people just going somewhere off the, just kind of going wrong a little bit. You always call it out, but you do it in a loving way and in a way that's redemptive that brings people back into the fold. And I want to thank you for that.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyway,
thank you.
I got to go. I got another TV one to do coming up.
Hey. Go for it. He should have let everybody go to TV One. Check out this.
Oh, yeah. This one, I don't think I would do that. It's Press TV in Iran, which I'm not a fan of, but I figured I say no to them almost all the time. I said yes to them because God knows why.
You will know because they need to see you. They need to see you.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
I think they do.
Yeah, they do. You're going to inspire some. You're going to inspire some girl over there.
Well, that's true. Except
Some-
this is their international English language stuff, which,
Well.
gets a lot of nut jobs watching it, frankly.
Well,
I wouldn't say that publicly, but I'll tell you.
Well, but yes. And so that's why we say,